Yay for recording multiple episodes in one day in terms of I'm doing this episode and Monday's an MMORPG and I did a review of the book one of Song of Albion. Blah, blah, blah. Welcome everybody to the latest episode of Monday Musings. I'm pre-recording all of these on Saturday, October 23rd, so hopefully by the time this comes out, it'll find you in good health on October 25th. Um, this will be a rambling episode. I don't have a list in front of me, so I'm just going to talk about a few things. Um, Today is the day that theoretically, knock on wood, my wife is hopefully theoretically signing all the paperwork that needed to be signed. And if all goes well, then I should know by this evening if that's all done. And if it is, she'll be scheduling her flight back, and we will then be moving forward with all the things that we got to get done here ahead of the tabletop prep, because that's coming down right around the corner. Um, Yeah, it's soon. November 7th is when we're going to be meeting up for the first time with our group to do character creation stuff. We won't stream that episode, but we'll record some of the content from that. If you watched the video that I put out the other day on the tabletop update, you get more information about that. That's somewhere here on YouTube, so feel free to dig into that. I am powering my way through the Song of Albion, which is a book trilogy, fantasy trilogy with a Celtic twist by Stephen R. Lawhead, and it's a good book. It's a good series, I should say. And I haven't read it in a long time. Like it's been at least 20 years since I've read it. It came out 30 years ago, but it had been at least 20 years since I've read it. A lot is different than I remember, but I've also matured as a writer and as an adult. But the first book, I already did the review. And I'm already into the second book, and these are much easier to read. The previous, when I was reading the Mistborn Trilogy, uh, there was a lot going on in the sense that it was my first time back into reading for a very long time, and I hadn't ever read those books before, so I was taking my time, and I did skim read portions of those, but it still took me like about 3 weeks per book. And then I plowed through the Paradise War in like 4 days or something like that, 4 or 5 days, 19, 20, 4 days, maybe five. But the difference is that I've already read the Paradise War years ago, now like 3 or 4 times through. So, some of this was me being kind of familiar with some of the elements of the story. So I wasn't skim reading, but I definitely wasn't poring over every single word and trying to find the plot holes and what's going on with this, and is this a plot device, and is this a plot twist, is this I don't need to do that because these are books that I've already read. So when it comes to the books that I've already read, I can read those a lot more quickly than I can a book like Mistborn Trilogy, because I've never read those before. So yeah, that was fun going from taking 3 weeks to read a book to plowing through something in 4 days. Also, the length is a lot different because I think I read somewhere, and I don't remember where I read it because I can't find it this morning as I'm looking, or this afternoon, I should say. I think the Paradise War was only like 130,000 words, so it's a much shorter read than, say, one of Sanderson's novels, which is 200,000 plus, with the Mistborn novels. So, in any case, looking forward to getting those. I should be able to wrap all those books up by the end of. At least that's the plan. I plan on just plowing my way through the Song of Albion before the end of October, because I want to be able to do the Sword and Sorcery for November, and I think I gotta figure out if I can find it. But I think I'm gonna read. How many did he do? Let me look real quick because I know Robert Jordan wrote some. Robert Jordan Conan. I know Robert Jordan wrote some Conan stuff, but I had never read them. I'd only ever read his Wheel of Time. The Conan Chronicles. Conan the Invincible, Conan the Defender, Conan the Unconquered. First published in 1982. First published 1982, April 1983 by Robert Jordan. I think I'm going to read these. I think these, if I can get my hands on them for the Kindle, Um, if not, I might see if I can just find some. I'm not gonna be able to get the paperbacks because I just can't get them shipped down here in enough time. Um, but I think those are the ones I'm gonna read for the Sword and Sorcery month. I would love to read Fafhrd Grey Mouser again. It's been years, 20 plus years since I've read Fafhrd and Grey Mouser. Um, but I'm not going to because I would like to do the Robert Jordan Conan books. I think that's going to be my November read, or at least part of my November read, because I got a whole bunch of other stuff that I want to do. Like I want to do the Thrawn trilogy again because I haven't read that in 30 years. Um, I got to admit, I'm so happy that I've got a Kindle Paperwhite. A lot of that was just, for years I was traveling, so I couldn't have book collections anymore because when you're traveling around, you just can't. It's just stuff. And then Chris and I, we struggle with not wanting to buy a lot of stuff because we rent and we don't move very frequently. But we did like when we moved from Cancun to Mexico. That was a cross country move to Mexico City. Um, and we just ended up selling like all of our office stuff, like big screen TV, all the office chairs, um, you know, microwave, kitchenware, all that. So we just sold it. There's no reason to travel cross country with all that stuff because you can buy new versions generally cheaper when you get to your destination than it would cost to actually ship all that stuff. And so we've just kind of avoided buying stuff because this is more stuff that we have to move, and we know this is not our final destination. Um, although I was looking at the timeline today, and got some cashews floating around. Sorry about that. I had a handful of nuts before the show, and apparently they're floating around in my back of my teeth. Um, our 4-year anniversary is coming up at this place. It's hard to believe that we've been at this place for 4 years. In any case, I didn't buy books for a long time. I just kind of quit reading because of Netflix and video games and everything else. But thanks to Liam, by the way, um, got me inspired. Because reading used to be that was the thing I did before video games and internet. I'm a I am a pre-internet person. I'm old enough that I can remember a time when there was no internet. I didn't have internet. I mean, we had it at the house when I was growing up. My dad had it for business emails and stuff when I was a teenager. But, thinking back to living on my own, I didn't have I think I was 19. I had a cable connection in Denver when I was 19, 1999. And since 1999, I have had internet since then. But I was 19 years old at that point. So the first 18 years of my life, I largely grew up without the internet. Like we didn't download games. We had to go buy them in boxes, you know, all that kind of stuff. So, um, getting that Kindle Paperwhite was the best thing I've done. So, especially, now that it's kind of like the training wheels are off and I'm back in the groove again. So I've got a pretty good list made up. I really want to get to the Expanse novels because I love that TV show and I really want to read those books. So those are going to be on. I think those are going to happen soonish, probably over the holidays, because once I get through November, we get through the Sword and Sorcery, and then I think I'm going to dive into the Thrawn trilogy, which should only take me a couple of weeks considering I've already read those books before, so it'll be like a quick read. And then I do want to reread the Chronicles of Amber at some point. Maybe I'll do that before I dive into the Expanse. But I'd like to start the Expanse. If I don't do it in January or December, I might do it in January. We'll see. But it is coming down the pipeline because I want to read those books. Speaking of books and TV shows and movies, I saw Dune. And I gotta say, it was amazing. Can't wait to watch it when Chris gets back. I'll probably watch it again before she gets home. Phenomenal. My only complaint is that it's so stupid that they didn't just greenlight both films. Supposedly, I made a rant about this on my Facebook and furthered it in Discord. about how I don't really think, if it's true, that would be really crappy of Legendary and Warner Brothers. But um, I don't know that it's true. This whole, we don't know if it's greenlit yet. We got to see how it's going to do in the theaters. Everybody go see it. And there is obviously, from a financial standpoint, I believe it has a $165 million budget plus double that for marketing. I was reading that they need to make 300 mil to break even. And with pandemic, even though everybody's been vaccinated and everything else, there's still this, nobody, people are still scared to go to the theater, and rightfully so. Um, but we're kind of considering that most people have gotten the vaccination and boosters and everything else. You would think that we're getting to the point where people can start going back to the theaters. So I think there's this hope that over the holiday season, Dune will make its money back. I don't think it has yet. I'm gonna look it up. This is again 10/23. This is the 23rd. Let me look up Dune. How much has it made at the box office? It's made 147 million so far, but it just released like this past weekend over the in the United States. So it remains to be seen what it's going to do. Um, and supposedly what they have said is that, well, if it does well on HBO Max, then we'll greenlight the sequel. But I also, like I said, I don't know how much of that I buy into, because I kind of think like they're saying that they haven't bought the. I think I feel like they're saying that they haven't greenlit the sequel because they're trying to get as many people as possible to go to the theater to see it, to drive up ticket sales, and then as many people as possible to sign up to HBO Max to watch it, so that they have this whole, because all the hashtag campaigns that I've seen is hashtag Greenlight Dune, and it's like there's a part of me that, knowing how marketing works, I'm like, I wonder if they're just doing that as a marketing ploy. Be that as it may, um, it was the most one of the most faithful adaptations. So, for those of you who don't know, there's two adaptations that have been done on film before. One was David Lynch's version, which David Lynch has distanced himself from. He does not consider that part of his repertoire of films, because of the fact that he didn't get final editing cut and the producers did some stuff to it that he didn't like. It is a good film, but it is a wildly different take on the Dune novel. It's not. There's not much in that movie that is. There are. I don't know. There are things that are close to what happened in the book, but there's a lot that's not. Then there is the Sci-Fi Channel miniseries of Dune, which I love. Now, special effects suck, but it was like 2001 when that came out on the Sci-Fi Channel. And again, not good special effects, but it is a very accurate take on the book. And the reason they were able to do that is because they did it as a mini series, so they had a lot of room to go into things. And that was a very accurate take on things. And I love it. I've watched it, I think, 3 times, and I think it's a great rendition on this. Now, when I went and saw this new Dune film in the theaters, that first half, because that's the thing that drives me nuts, it's only the first half of the book. It is extremely accurate, other than the sex change on Liet, which is not a big deal. But the scientist Liet, who's the Imperial scientist, is a woman in the film and a male in the book. Don't care, doesn't matter. Um, but otherwise, the adaptation is spot on, and I really don't think they cut too much out of the book. Um, and assuming that he's going to do a second part, that's when we get into in my mind, the better part of the book, because the first half is obviously all of the. How can I spoil it? That book's been out for 40, longer than that. It's been out longer than I've been alive. That book has been out like 50 years or something. Like, I don't know how much of Dune you can actually spoil. Um, in any case, the first half is getting to the good stuff, and then the second half is where all the good stuff really, especially when you get into the mysticism of Dune. It all happens in the second half of the book. So, second half of the movie, assuming it gets to be made, is gonna be good. And I've read a lot of reviews which talk about this. It's like this whole the cast that they compiled And all of the movie trailers and everything they're doing, you're seeing this huge cast. You've got Javier Bardem, you've got um, Jason Momoa, you've got all of these characters, and yet most of them only have tiny little bit of screen time because their major moments happen in the second half of the story. Especially the character of Chani. Xenia's character, she was featured heavily in all the promo material, and she doesn't really have any lines of dialogue in this film. And she shows up in like the last 10 minutes of the movie, other than, all his visions and stuff. And it's like, ah, it was very frustrating from a science fiction lover standpoint because I knew going into it that it was only going to cover the first half of the book, but I didn't know how much of a cliffhanger they would do. And it was an absolute crappy cliffhanger. Not crappy bad, but just like crappy. Yeah, just why didn't you just do the two films back? Like, why couldn't you have greenlit both those films back to back? I mean, I don't know why. I mean, from a monetary standpoint, yes, it's a little bit of a risk, but that's why I can look back at New Line Cinema and say, at least they had the balls to look at the Lord of the Rings and say, this is such an epic story. We can't afford to just do it one at a time and see how it pans out. We need to take that risk, even if it means the company might go bankrupt. We take that risk because this story is epic enough that it deserves that risk to be taken. And so they greenlit all three films. And obviously, there were some budget restraints. Um, they did have to work within a budget, but you know, that could totally have been done with Warner Brothers and Legendary just saying, "Look, we'll greenlight both films, but we're not going to give you 165 million per film. We'll give you 100 million per film. So you got to make both of them at 200 million." Totally could have been done. Absolutely could have been done. Um, I don't know. It was a good film. I'm gonna watch it again before Chris gets home, and then I'll watch it again with Chris. But also, fuck you for making me wait now. It's going to be 3 years before the next one comes out because even if they do greenlight it, it won't get greenlit till later on this year, probably around the holidays. Then we get into 2021, and all of these stars have already booked out. I guarantee you they've already booked out their 2021 projects already. So even if we get to the point where this gets greenlit, it's not going to shoot until the end of 2021 at the earliest. More than likely, it'll be 2022 before it shoots, which means it won't be released. I don't think it'll be released until 2023, which means a 3 year wait, two to 3 year wait for that to come out. Um, I don't know. Good film, but I was very butthurt about the ending. um, tabletop, all the Project Ramen stuff. If you've paid attention, websites are up, newsletter's been changed over, Discord's been changed over, Patreon's been changed over. We haven't made the official announcement yet, but all of the people who are in the know, our community of people, um, who have been paying attention, they already know. So if you are in the know, feel free to um, dive into the Patreon, and you'll notice that there's all the links to all the places where you can go follow the social channels and the new websites and everything else. And then my brother is, as we speak, wrapping up the final build. And once I get that, I will be taking that and I'll be making a game trailer and getting it up on the new YouTube channel and getting the demo ready and the final version of the manual and all that stuff packaged and ready to go. And we will be pushing all of that, knock on wood, no catastrophes happening. That'll all go out on November 1st. So we are almost there. So April, May, June, July, August, September, October. 7 months, right? Or was that 8 months? That might be 8 months. Hang on, let me do the math on that again. March to April, April to May, May to June, June to July, July to August, August to September, September to October, October to November. 8 months. I had to do the math on that better. It was 8 months. We had wanted to have it ready by 6 months, and it just didn't happen because of life and my brother having two kids. Um, but yeah, it's going to be ready now. We're going to get that out, and then we're pushing ahead because now we've got to get to the next timeline for us is March of 2022 is our next kind of internal milestone that we're looking at going. It would be nice to have everything ready for March 2022. I will have all my tabletop stuff ready. Whether or not the point and click adventure game is ready by March depends largely on how much time my brother has over the winter holidays. Um, because the hard part's done in terms of all the foundation work and figuring out how to do the quest system and figuring out how to do the mechanics and figuring out how to do that and getting animation working and all that stuff. Now that's all done, the rest of it's just okay, move on to the next scene, build some new buildings, write some new quests in, copy paste the mechanics over, and you're good to go. Time consuming, yes. Difficult, no. So, work in progress. Still got a lot to get done. Um, Pushed out chapters 7 and 8 in October. Chapters 9 and 10 will be coming in November, and 11 and 12 in December. So moving forward, should be holding to that schedule pretty nicely. I could theoretically write more than 2 chapters a month, but I'm not going to because I need to give myself plenty of time to work on the modules, the maps for the modules, and also because we're going to be DMing Lost Mine of Phandelver starting in mid-November. Um, I have to give myself enough time per week to prep for the Sunday sessions. If I'm going to be DMing 2 hours, I need to be able to spend at least 2 hours prepping each session so that I make sure that I understand exactly where we're going for that adventure and what needs to be done and what needs to be DM'd and everything else. So, should be fun. I'm looking forward to that. Costumes are here. Um, Chris doesn't know what she's playing yet, but I just got her a generic blue cloak and a cool like lunar chain thing for her forehead if she wanted to play like some sort of I know she's gonna be a wood elf, but I don't know what class she's gonna play. Probably a ranger. That'll be the easiest. Because we already have a druid in the party, but she might be a bard. Bards are hard though. Like, well, they're not hard, but for a first timer, it would be easier just to play a ranger because then it's just pew pew pew, shoot your bow. So it's all coming together. It's hard to believe it's already been 8 months we've been working on that project, but it is. We finally got stuff that we're launching to the public, so that's pretty cool. Um, and then after that happens, after it all goes live, we've got some other stuff we're doing behind the scenes, business stuff, which theoretically may or may not pan out. You never know. But we are. Oh, one thing I forgot. We did order. This was on a whim, by the way. So we had been talking about for a long time, my brother and I, like 4 or 5 years now. We've talked about we should just buy a 3D printer and start doing our own figurines and miniatures. This is when we were going to be doing tabletop with Saga Bohemia. And we were always just like, yeah, when we get to that point. Well, we've gotten to that point with this project, and we had debated whether or not we wanted to invest in a 3D printer as part of the tabletop aspect of Project Ramen. And we just said, no, we're not going to do that right now. We want to wait till we get the source books are out and everything else, and then we'll worry about adding that element onto everything else because it's way too much to do all at once. Well, then he was at the flea market last week, and he sends me these pictures, and he's like, this dude is here at the flea market, and he's been doing 3D printing for like 7 years, and he's got all these miniatures and everything else, and that was it. And he just was like, he just mentioned this in passing and went on his. So I like called him, and I was like, "Are you still in town?" And he's like, "Well, yeah. I mean, I was like, "Are you at the flea market?" And he's like, "No, we're all on the other side of town, but it's a small town." And I was like, "Do you have time to go back?" And he's like, "Why?" And I was like, "I'm gonna send you some money. Can you go back and buy those?" And he's like, "I could totally do that because here's the thing. This guy, those miniatures we got were a steal. I'm not gonna say what we got them for, but it was 5 to 10 times cheaper than any 3D printed miniatures that we've ever seen on the internet before. The only way we would have been able to get them that cheap is if we had printed them ourselves. This guy was obviously selling them not, he was making a profit, but not a big profit. I would say he probably charges double. If according to the estimates that I know of, he charges about double what it cost to make them, which means we got them nearly at wholesale cost. So we got 103 miniatures for not a lot of money. Um, Again, 5 to 10 times cheaper than what we would have had to pay online. And obviously we don't get to customize those. It's just a bunch of generic fantasy miniatures. But who cares? It's fantasy miniatures. Like, you can use those in all sorts of different ways. And we are going to be tying that into the Patreon. I got to talk to my brother and my wife and figure out exactly how we want to write the tier up for that. But there's going to be I don't know exactly how to do standalone tiers on Patreon other than um, just to tell people that, you know, when you do this tier, make sure that it's a one-time thing. You need to turn it off because I can't manually turn it off. Like, it's the thing where if you're going to do this, then you need to sign up. The other thing too is if we had a tier that was for that and then had other perks along with the miniature, but I think we're just going to do it as a one-off tier. But what I'd like to do is uh, that one-off tier will be for hand-painted miniatures because all three of us like to paint miniatures. We did that when we built the big D&D boards, which we may bring those out because we still have those. And those are things that Joey and I built. Um, and we might tie those into the Patreon or something and sell those to backers or something. Um, who knows what we're gonna do with those? But we do have the miniatures, and we're gonna tie those into the Patreon somewhere, and we're gonna hand paint those for patrons who want them. But it'll be a limited thing. I mean, we've got about, I think, like I said, we have 103 of them, but I think we might keep 25 or so for ourselves. And then, like 75 of them we will offer on Patreon. So that'll be coming up soon. And then we're also going to be, knock on wood, doing a little. They have a bunch of blackberries, wild blackberries, and we're going to attempt to do our own blackberry wine. Um, Starting this fall. Speaking of which, my brother just sent me a message. Let me go read it. He's having a little bit of a hiccup on getting something done, so we're going to be looking at that this afternoon. In any case, that's a good stopping point, everybody. I'm 27 minutes in. Join us in Discord if you haven't already done so. Subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon, all those fun things. Hang out with us wherever you want to hang out with us. And I will see everybody in the next episode. Stay safe, everybody. And don't forget, Mondays and MMORPGs later on today. Until then, cheers.